General Sega, the committee now recognizes you for 5 minutes to present your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Johnson, members of the committee, colleagues, I am Ron Sega, Vice Chair of the National Research Council's Committee on NASA's Strategic Direction. On behalf of Al Carnicel, Chair of the committee, and our 12 members, it is my pleasure to come before you today to speak to you about the work of our committee. Our committee was charged with considering the strategic direction of the agency as set forth most recently in the 2011 NASA Strategic Plan and other relevant statements of space policy issued by the President of the United States. We were also charged with considering the goals of the agency as set forth in the 1958 National Aeronautics and Space Act, as well as recent legislation, and with assessing the relevance of NASA's goals to national priorities. Finally, we were charged with recommending how NASA could establish and effectively communicate a common, unifying vision for NASA's strategic direction that encompasses NASA's varied missions. Our committee was not charged with establishing strategic goals for NASA, and we did not do so. Our committee consists of members from industry and academia, former NASA aerospace officials, and former analysts and experts from both the executive and legislative branches. We met 5 times throughout 2012. The committee received input from nearly 800 members of the public through a web-based questionnaire. And small groups of committee members visited each of the 9 NASA field centers and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The resulting report, entitled NASA's Strategic Direction and the Need for National Consensus, is a consensus report by the committee. As I am sure you're aware, NASA has been tugged in multiple directions for the past several years. Despite a turbulent policy environment, the agency has made many astonishing accomplishments. There remains, however, a lack of consensus on the agency's future direction among the United States political leadership. Without such a consensus, the agency cannot be expected to develop or work effectively toward long-term priorities. In addition, there is a mismatch between the portfolio of programs assigned to the agency and the budget allocated by Congress. What we found during the course of our deliberations was rather obvious. Although NASA develops a strategic plan on a regular basis, the agency itself does not establish its strategic goals. Those are developed by the national leadership, and key stakeholders within the national leadership do not always agree on the goals the agency should pursue. Thus, our committee recommends that the administration should take the lead in forging a new national consensus on NASA's future that is stated in terms of a set of clearly defined strategic goals and objectives. This process should apply both within the administration and between the administration and Congress, and should be reached only after meaningful technical consultations with the private sector and potential international partners. The strategic goals and objectives should be ambitious, yet technically rational, and should focus on the long term. Following the establishment of a new consensus on the agency's future, NASA should establish a new strategic plan that provides a framework for decisions on how the agency will pursue its strategic goals and objectives, allows for flexible and realistic implementation, clearly establishes agency-wide priorities to guide the allocation of resources within the agency budget, and presents a comprehensive picture that integrates the various fields of aeronautics and space activities. To reduce the mismatch between the agency's activities and the resources allocated to it, the White House, Congress, and NASA, as appropriate, could employ any or all of the following 4 non mutually exclusive options. The committee does not recommend any one option or combination of options, but presents these to illustrate the scope of decisions and trades that could be made. Option 1. Institute an aggressive restructuring program to reduce infrastructure and personnel costs to improve efficiency. Option 2. Engage in and commit for the long term to more cost-sharing partnerships with other government agencies, private sector industries, and international partners. Option 3. Increase the size of the NASA budget. Option 4. Reduce considerably the size and scope of elements of NASA's current program portfolio to better fit the current and anticipated budget profile. This would require reducing or eliminating one or more of NASA's current portfolio elements: human exploration, Earth and space science, aeronautics, and space technology, in favor of the remaining elements. Each of these sample options, with the possible exception of option 2, would require legislative action. Our recommendation with respect to NASA centers states, first, the administration and Congress should adopt regulatory and legislative reforms that would enable NASA to improve the flexibility of the management of its centers. Second, NASA should transform its network of field centers into an integrated system that supports its strategic plan and communication strategy and advances its strategic goals and objectives. With regard to partnerships, the committee recommends NASA should work with other government agencies and with responsibilities in aeronautics and space to more effectively and efficiently coordinate the nation's aeronautics and space activities. And the United States should explore opportunities to lead a more international approach to future large space efforts, both in the human space program and in the science program. Finally, the committee was impressed with the quality of personnel and level of commitment of NASA's civil service and contractor staffs, and with the superb work done by the agency in general. However, the committee also heard about the frustration of many staff with the agency's current path and the limitations imposed on it by the inability of the national leadership to agree upon a long-term direction for the agency. Only with a national consensus on the agency's future direction, along the lines described in this report, can NASA continue to deliver the wonder, the knowledge, the national security and economic benefits, and the technology that typified its history. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I would be pleased to respond to any questions the committee may have.
And thank you, General, and we will have questions.